Emily, I want to talk to you about Hunter Biden and the trial that you've been following closely. We've heard that from Hunter Biden's ex-wife and a former girlfriend who's testified at his criminal trial about finding his crack pipes and other drug paraphernalia as he fights a gun charge in a court in the US state of Delaware. The trial is about whether he lied on a gun purchase form in 2018 when he said he wasn't using drugs. Emily, what's Hunter Biden's defence here?
Yeah, that he, at the moment he said he wasn't using drugs, wasn't using drugs. But of course, there's evidence actually from his own memoir, from his laptop, that he was at the time using drugs. And when I say at the time, I don't mean the precise moment so much as I mean that he was clearly an addict in the days before and after, because we don't have, a text message from the exact moment that Hunter Biden signed on to that form. But we do have plenty of evidence in his own words from his own property that he was struggling with, for example, crack addiction. I mean, it's really ugly stuff. It's in very close proximity to when the form was signed. And so it's hard for him to wiggle out of it. But that is the defense that he's making right now, that at the time he signed the form, he didn't expect to relapse. He didn't expect to fall prey to addiction again, definitely pulling at people's heartstrings as part of the defense as well. So hard to know if that will work because there's so much graphic evidence of Hunter Biden's drug use in a very short window of time. But I guess there isn't anything at the exact second the form was signed.
How likely is it that we could actually see Hunter Biden behind bars?
Behind bars is another question than whether I guess he's convicted on these charges because, Delaware, friendly area for the Bidens. Court system we've actually seen be fairly friendly to Hunter Biden. This is the same case that a judge was so confused by the prosecutor's lenience to Hunter Biden last year that she kind of paused the case at the moment and said, what's going on exactly? Is this the prosecution? So I don't know that, if he's convicted, he actually ends up behind bars. I do think that it's hard for him to avoid being convicted. I'm sure this is a very friendly jury. I don't know how he can wiggle out of it, but if I had to put money on it, I would say he's convicted. I don't know that he actually ends up behind bars, though.
Okay. And how's this trial actually impacting his father, Joe Biden? Are people interested in it? Is it having an effect?
Yeah, I think people are interested in it. I think what makes people more interested in it is actually how little attention that the media pays to it compared to other cases, particularly Trump cases. It makes people feel like something's being hidden from them. And to an extent, it is. I mean, the media has really not wanted to talk about this trial, especially because the Biden family is very in favor of gun restrictions. And here you have the president's son pretty flagrantly violating not just gun law, which they're very, very much in favor of, but also just safe gun practices. So it does feel like a double standard. It does feel like glaring hypocrisy. And on top of that, I mean, just the salacious nature of the laptop, of the memoir, that stuff always is going to catch a certain amount of the population's attention. It's hard to look away.
Absolutely. And now the FBI has admitted that the Hunter Biden laptop is real after years of being dismissed as disinformation. Look, the Hunter Biden trial is unfolding after Donald Trump was convicted of 34 felonies in New York City. Emily, first of all, so much is happening over in America. Can I get your reaction to that outcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was entirely predictable. It was a jury in Manhattan, so the likelihood that he was going to be convicted, I would have put money on it. I didn't, but if I would have been right, because it just it seemed like there was also even just some of the evidence that was allowed in. This judge, by the way, actually donated a small amount of money to Democrats, which is a strange thing for a judge to do. It just looked like it was never going in Trump's favor, even though the legal questions about the underlying nature of the prosecution, I think, are extremely serious. That you have the statute of limitations passing, so a prosecutor who ran on a partisan ticket then trumps up the charges, no pun intended, actually, to be felonies when they would typically be misdemeanors because they're in the service or in the furtherance of a separate crime. But Donald Trump was not charged with that underlying crime, which is a very, very strange thing to do. Even MSNBC was calling this a novel legal theory. Questions were raised in the New York Times about the wisdom of this novel legal theory. So it just in court, though, seemed as though what had gone through the legal process, what had actually gotten to the jury, was going to go against Trump.
I obviously got your opinion on whether or not we'll see Hunter Biden put behind bars, but what's your take on whether we'll see Donald Trump actually sentenced to prison?
It's a really, really hard question to answer, and partially because I just don't want to answer it because I'm not super optimistic. I don't think it's obviously a good thing for the country to see a former president behind bars, especially because this is somebody who ran on, basically was announcing his presidential run as James Comey was. And a lot of people in the United States still see at letting Hillary Clinton off the hook, the other opponent off the hook. And Hunter Biden obviously has not been. They let the statute of limitations elapse on his Foreign Agents Registration Act prosecution or the potential for those charges to be brought. So, it doesn't feel like a healthy place that the United States is in. So I kind of don't even want to think about it. But I will say I think that it's not a zero possibility. I think there's a significant chance. I'm not saying it's greater than 50%. Maybe it's around 30%. Because this is a judge, by the way, who donates, as a judge, who gives such a small amount of money to Democrats for political purposes. It's sort of a big breach of decorum. So it feels like there's a real possibility that Judge Juan Merchan he very much wants to, he has a partisan kind of opinion on whether Donald Trump is good for the country. And that could certainly lead to him being behind bars. He has a really strong case on appeal. Some legal analysts think that it should go all the way up to the Supreme Court. I think it is likely that he has a strong case for appeal, but his sentencing is 4 days before the Republican National Convention. There would be just so much drama surrounding it. And that might even, make the judge more likely to slap him with a charge or to slap him with a sentence in prison because he doesn't want it to look like he's getting off easy right before the convention and before he's nominated.
Yeah, that's true. We'll, of course, have to wait and see. Insane times in America at the moment. Well, the first major swing state poll following Trump's guilty verdict found a solid lead for the Republican candidate. According to the poll, Georgia voters found they favour Trump over Biden, 49% to 44%. Emily, why do you think that is?
Yeah, these polls are really important. And one thing I also think is worth noting is that Joe Biden is out there campaigning, just like he did in 2020, with this major theme of decency, civility, normalcy, lowercase d, democracy. To a lot of voters, actually, I think this prosecution of a president, which is unprecedented, as everyone basically understands and admits and concedes, that feels like chaos to people. It doesn't help Biden make this argument that he is the guy for stability and calm and normalcy. So in a way, I think this can really backfire on Joe Biden. I think it fires up Trump supporters. I think for the average voter, it's kind of baked into the Trump cake. He ran. I mean, you can go back, pull the clips of him saying, I alone can fix the American system because I know it. I'm part of it. So I think Trump always had this kind of borderline white collar malfeasance, thing to him. He was sort of always open that he gamed the system in the United States. He wasn't out there saying, hey, I'm a criminal, but he was saying basically, I know how corruption works. So I don't think it does move most voters. I do think it really fires up Trump supporters. And I also think that it gives maybe some of those, again, Dem-leaning independents pause as to whether Joe Biden's actually the candidate of normalcy and decency and democracy.
We are going to see Joe Biden and Donald Trump go head to head in a debate at the end of the month. What can we expect?
Yeah, Biden always performed in those debates in 2020 better than I expected him to, given the way he performs. Often on the campaign trail, he seems to, as everyone is familiar with, we've seen the videos when he's president, when he was running, to struggle getting through normal human interactions, loses his place in the middle of questions. We didn't really see that version of Joe Biden show up to the debates. Maybe it's because it's a short time span, it's more controlled. I would expect him to be ready to rumble with Donald Trump and maybe surprise some people. Again, people can make an argument for why he's able to perform so well in a debate. I don't know what the answer is. I think maybe it is a more controlled setting, but he has generally overperformed expectations. Donald Trump is actually fighting for his life at this point. He's fighting to stay out of prison because if he becomes president, he can pardon himself. So that puts the stakes at a different level for him. So maybe we see a calmer Donald Trump, a more serious, a grave Donald Trump, knowing that, his life is at stake actually this time around.
Yeah. Perhaps we will, of course, wait and see. Emily Jashinsky, so great to speak with you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.